Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for the Making Progress channel, and today is video number 8, the potential future of genetic engineering. And this is from a subcategory of videos that I'll be making, one of the biggest subtopics in this channel, called Preparing for the Future, what you need to know about your future. Yeah, see? All right. So what's on the agenda in this inevitably quite lengthy video check this out. If you want super short videos, this is probably not going to be the channel for you. But if you like long form stuff, a lot of thought into it, then welcome and please stay a while. And to buy things, wait, we don't have anything to buy. Go to buy the training app. Yeah, do that. First, we're talking about some caveats, I think. Oh, JK, no caveats. I'll say them now. I may not know anything of what I am saying, and I'm not that smart. But if you're in for a fun ride of fantasy and potential outcomes, great. But let me know if I get anything wrong in the comments, the usual caveat. We will talk about some of the upsides of what genetic engineering could give humans. We will talk about the downsides, and then we'll try to address the downsides to see if we can't sort of make some sense of things. We're going to talk about potential pathways in the real world, how we can see genetic engineering sort of take off. And then we can talk about the future of genetic engineering and where all of this may lead to. So, exciting time to talk about this. It's 2023, the recording of this video, early 2023. And so far, genetic engineering is in its very nascent infant states. There's been like one study where they did some genetic modification with viral vector and they cured a few people of type 1 diabetes forever. But other than that, I just don't know a whole lot of examples. And no doubt this is all stuff that's in the lab being worked on and with animals and things like that. But all the fun stuff is in the future. So great for a preparing for the future topic. So what are the potential upsides of genetic engineering? That is, if we do genetic engineering on humans in society, what kind of benefits could we get? Because obviously we want to do things that have benefits. First, we can prevent physical disease. Like a lot of the diseases you get is because your genetics aren't that great and you either have genetic disease or you are susceptible to regular disease because your genetics for like immunity are not that great. And if we give you better genetics, then you will prevent and ameliorate a ton of disease. Awesome. Easy. Next, you could potentially get genetic engineering for physical upgrades. For example, genetic engineering for better eyes and better eyesight, better hearing, better endurance, better strength, etc., etc. Just becoming a better person physically with your body. You could enhance physical appearance. And this is actually one of the more straightforward ones. The way you deposit body fat in what areas of your body, how taut your skin is, how old it looks, how wrinkled it gets, that is all enormously genetic, enormously, if not almost entirely. So if genetic engineering of appearance becomes a reality at some point, you'll be able to look more like what you want to, whatever that want to is. A slight prediction here is there will be some people that are going to look like crazy. There's absolutely people that are going to pay to get horns and like snarling teeth, and it'll be funny, and it's just kind of like in costume all the time. It's like Halloween every day, which is dope. I love it when people look weird and different, so I'm in. Most people, I suspect, we will get to normalizing their appearance to a great extent, or otherwise, to phrase it better, reducing various different forms of things that we consider universally unattractive, and more people are going to look more universally attractive and thus maybe a little bit more similar, but definitely just this is going to be where I'm a full believer based on a ton of evidence that most beauty standards are genetic in nature. The way we prefer other people look and ourselves look has not a ton to do with culture and mostly to do with our universal human genetics. And so people are just going to look more like that, right? Like, Scott, what's an example of a good-looking white girl?
Like an actress? Maybe?
Yeah.
Like the chick from The Boys.
Great. The chick from The Boys. I don't know who I don't know any young white females outside of the adult film industry, and I don't know them by name. Riley Reid. If someone looks it up, like I don't want to look like that. That is a lot of heroin dumped on a single person over a lifetime. Gee whiz, this is a retro reference, but Saved by the Bell, Kelly Kapowski. Scott, remember who that is?
Oh, yeah.
Tiffany Amber Thiessen. Look her up in her prime. Women are mostly going to look like that. And you say, but hold on a sec. That's just Caucasian beauty standards. Well, black girls will probably start looking more like Gabrielle Union, another retro reference. So go look up Gabrielle Union, Google her when she was like in her like mid-20s or whatever. It's like a flawless person. It's a flawless person. So there's going to be a lot of that, a ton of that. Huge upsides. A lot of people would want to sign up for something like that. Remember, this is genetic, so it's permanent. You can change it if you get other genetics to look another way, but nonetheless, this whole other conversation that I'll make another video about. Genetic engineering to prevent or reduce the scope of mental disease. Genetic engineering to reduce the prevalence of depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, etc. Big deal. Huge potential upsides. Then, because we're now working with the brain, mental ability upsides, higher intelligence, better memory, more empathy, better focus, more calm. These are all things that have insanely huge genetic components. And if you re-architect the genetics that deal with certain hormone balances, neurotransmitter balances, things like that, could be some straightforward low-hanging fruit. We'll talk about how that develops later. But potentially, if you change the genome, you're going to be able to make people that just like to be in their brains better, plain and simple. Number 6 is altering psychological traits. This is a real doozy. This is a talk for another time in its own right, is people could get their brains altered genetically such that they get more motivation to work for value as opposed to have leisure time. If you really have a true, unique, inside your brain experience of I want to and love to work to produce value, that is a switch flip or dial turn to becoming wealthier, which brings all the other great stuff about being richer with it. And you actually like to do it, so that you're not forcing yourself. If you can re-architect your brain, or your mind really, to want more of that through genetic engineering, like, holy crap, that's really sweet. You could do genetic engineering that gives you more energy to make improvements all around, just in your life, because you just have more physical energy, more mental energy. Like you wake up and you're like, yes, let's do things. Let's make the world a better place. Because some of us wake up like that sometimes, but some of us, all of us at some point wake up and they're like, man, just do a couple things. I'm just gonna be high on weed the rest of the day. I don't want life today. Maybe we do less of that. More alignment between work and a sense of purpose. There is absolutely a genetic component to how much people see their work as a sense of their deep purpose. If you got the kind of genetic engineering that makes your work seem more of your deep purpose, you kind of like that. You kind of solve the life equation. Because if work is something you like to do and you have a ton of energy to do it, you get a huge kick out of it, and your work gives you a sense of deep purpose, then you're just like becoming wealthier and making the world a better place through your job and helping other people with the valuable goods and services you provide. And also it's an ecstatic experience for you. Gee whiz, man. That's real great. Huge upside. Aging slowing and aging reversal, which is actually one of the most advanced subfields of genetic engineering right now, which is kind of a trip to think about. Whole vid on its own, there's a ton of this stuff going on. That vid will come sooner than later. I already have that one I think it's written up actually. And lastly, really trippy, we'll talk about this later in today's video, is machine interface optimization alterations through genetics to have a better compatibility to BMI, brain-machine interface, which is coming. It is essentially almost inevitable, where, you get a microchip implanted or whatever on the surface of your skull, and it talks to your brain for you, and thus you can just wish your phone to have a schedule that says Stacy comes over at 3 p.m. to give me a beej, and your phone just displays 3 p.m. Stacy. That's awesome. That kind of stuff, various genetic construction of your body and brain, you can engineer yourself to be more compatible with that, so you could have a higher throughput, accomplish more just with your own thoughts. And then you can have increased genetic proclivity to have a better compatibility with LMI, limb-machine interface. And that's when let's say you had a terrible lawnmower accident, you lost your lower arm. Well, they'll be able to give you a cybernetic arm that, if you have the right genetics, first of all, you can regrow your arm with the right genetics. But even if you don't want to regrow your arm, or potentially that's somehow an intractable problem, you can have genetics that, for example, are not allergic to various metals and composite plastics on the device. so that, because, sometimes your body just rejects stuff, but it rejects stuff because of genetics. If you can alter genetics such that the specific nanomaterials that coat the limb that connects to your arm are not something your body rejects, just that simple genetic modification can mean you'll clip that arm on, and now you have an amazing cybernetic arm that's super strong. So you immediately quit your day job and you go on the road as a truck driver / amateur arm wrestler. Scott, you ever seen Over the Top with Sylvester Stallone?
I have not.
You claim to be a movie guy. Here you sit in front of me, movieless.
I watch cinema.
I'm going to leave. Told myself I'd never associate myself with you people. Film noir. If anyone ever tells me like, hey, like, do you want to watch this movie? And I'm like, what is it? They're like, well, it's film noir. I'm going to either get violent or run.
Oh, he's an arm wrestler in this one.
Yes, he is.
Oh, Jesus.
It's amazing. Sylvester Stallone, Over the Top. Folks, look into it. It's an amazing movie by all accounts. It won 18 Oscars, I think, and 2 Oscars the next year because they couldn't give out enough Oscars. All right. Those are cool upsides. Fantasyland is over. Let's talk about real stuff like downsides, because there's got to be downsides to genetic engineering. Absolutely, I agree with you there. I thought of at least, gee whiz, 6 of them. Downside number 1. Create monsters in a lab. You've probably seen about 18 movies about this exact thing. Do genetic engineering. Somebody kill that thing. The usual. Second is long-term risks of modification no one saw coming. So you get genetic engineering, you have perfect vision for 10 years, and then cancer of the everything, and then you die. Oops, shit happens. Number 3 downside is inequality goes up. Somebody who has an IQ of 220 with genetic modification is going to be able to get into a lot of schools that most people won't be able to, and it's going to be in that spot that you should have had, and you studied hard, but you didn't get the gene modification, so inequality, all terrible things. We'll address that in a bit. The tech base, the average access and understanding of bioengineering technologies is going to go up around society as this technology becomes more prevalent. And that tech base can be now by more groups of people than ever exploited to produce things like bioweapons. And, like that's really, really bad because once we have crazy gene editing technology, which is going to happen for genetic engineering to occur, and it's already well on its way, there are absolutely ways in which it can become weaponized. Totally. The 5th downside or sort of rejoinder to this whole thing is, well, we shouldn't play God. I'll talk about that in a bit. And the 6th point is, if we do enough genetic engineering, we're going to lose our humanity. What have we become now? Again, you've seen a trillion movies. Now, almost all of this comes from movies. And if a lot of your thinking about an issue mostly comes from cinematic film designed to entertain you, you're going to have to think through it a little bit more because most movies are, well, fantasy story tales, not grounded in logic. I know it's strange, but let me explain. Point number 1, addressing the downsides, creating monsters in a lab. Here's the thing. If you give birth to something that accidentally has eye lasers or insane nasty claws and a huge proclivity for violence, that is insanely unlikely through genetic engineering gone awry. Because active features like eye lasers and giant claws and the ability to jump 10 stories and eat people have to be engineered. They are features, not bugs. What happens when software gets buggy? Almost all the time, it just crashes and breaks. What happens when genetic engineered things are buggy? Well, they have like a liver malfunction and or death, right? Mutants, like in the X-Men, well, they have genetic mutations and they can shoot eye lasers. That's nonsense. Nonsense. It just doesn't happen. Now, should genetic engineering labs where they test things on live animals be like well secured? Yes. I don't think anyone's ever argued against that. So again, the creating monsters in a lab point is like you've seen way too many Hollywood movies that you haven't thought it through. So that was one of my most devastating lessons in high school biology, where I was like, what about mutants and stuff? And my science teacher was like, yeah, like when things have mutations, they're usually like they just die in the womb and you just never have a baby. I'm like, oh, that sucks. Like, or you come out and you're like, there's things wrong with you. That's what mutations do. It's accidentally making something that shoots eye lasers is less probable than making it on purpose, which is also very, very improbable. Number 2, long-term risks of modification nobody saw coming. This is totally legit. So we need to do loads of research and development and modeling to abate this possibility. But remember that without genetic engineering, we're not great. And while genetic engineering has risks to make us worse in some ways, it also has upsides to make us better. And if you do a net balance calculation, the upsides of well done genetic engineering, properly tested in the normal way that medicines are tested now, is hugely net positive over the languishing we're currently doing in mediocrity. So there's a lot wrong with us. Many of you watching this video struggle daily with mental health and with anxieties, moods. You'd rather be happier, but you're not because genetics. You might be balding. Not that I know anything about. You are so imperfect, and we're all broken dolls. And the reality of human existence is that there's way more good stuff than bad stuff to us, who we are. There's a lot of bad stuff. Like grandma was great, and then she got liver disease and died. Like, why did she get liver disease? Because her genetics just made her liver have disease at some point. Can't we fix that? Well, maybe. Shouldn't we try? Well, yeah, but what if it kills grandma? Here's the thing. Grandma's dying anyway. We're all dying anyway. And while we are alive, there's a lot to fix. There's a lot to work on. It's like refusing to improve your home by nailing in steel undergirders where they used to be wood because you think the whole home will fall down. Yeah, it can. But if you do a good job, the benefit of re-engineering your home is that it lasts for 5 times as long. And the wooden home will collapse anyway at some point. And there's termites in it, and it smells, and it's creaky, and it's weird. It doesn't store heat properly. That's our bodies right now. Our bodies are not that great at a ton of stuff. So if we do a genetic engineering, not at all, because we fear we're going to make a mistake. It's the same idea of not deploying AI because we think the AI is an existential risk. Being around is an existential risk. And I think we can do better with genetic engineering like we can with AI, way better than without it. So you can make the same argument about things that try to cure disease, treatments for disease. I mean, any pill that you take the doctor gives you when you're sick, there is a chance, very distinct, that it can have negative effects, but you still take it. Why? There's a number of people that have died from antibiotics is a lot. It's thousands and thousands from allergies and things like that, bad reactions. The number of people that have been saved by antibiotics is probably into the billions by now. So should you take the pill? Yeah, you probably should. So should genetic engineering still go through, even though it can lead to some bad things happening and we can work to ameliorate those possibilities? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I do not enjoy living in a currently aging and slowly dying body with all sorts of malfunction. I need to put glasses to see stuff. My hearing's not that great. Why? Can't we just fix that? I want to fix it. Let's try fixing it. Number 3 concern is that inequality goes up. And this is going to be true for some time. But here's the thing. Genetic upgrades will almost certainly be viral vectors. Like they take an engineered virus. I know that sounds scary if you don't know biology, but the virus is just the capsid portion of the thing that contains the genes, and you put all the right gene replacement genes into that virus, and it could just be a nanoparticle. It doesn't even have to be a virus. You put it in a needle, you shoot it into a person, and it goes all around and changes all the DNA you want. And then a couple days later, you're going to start to feel or look different or get all those results. And however long it takes, a couple months later, you look like Kim Kardashian or whatever. So because these things will all be very easily replicable, very low intensive procedures, because genetic engineering isn't like a machine opens you up and inserts stuff. Not at all. It's just a shot. That kind of tech gets cheap really, really quick. Within the first invention of a new vaccine, within a few years, everyone's got that vaccine basically for almost free, even if you're paying market prices for it. And this idea is that people start to improve, and then everyone starts to improve shortly thereafter. Like if a beauty company partnered with a pharmaceutical, made a genetic alteration to make you prettier, they're totally cool just selling it to rich people. But after a while, they're going to be like, all right, market research time, fellas, sit down. Everyone's in suits. All right, it's time for a meeting. What's our addressable market with beautification, genetic engineering? Someone's going to be like, rich people, like that. Good job, Bob. So do regular people and poorer people not want to look more beautiful with just one shot ever? Like, no, they want that as well. So what's our addressable market for this? Like everyone? Yes. How much are we going to make off selling this shit to everyone? An infinity amount of money. So instantly they're going to try to lower their prices to because as the tech builds up, you're able to lower prices. Your margins go like this. You think, okay, but if we lowered our prices a little bit, our customer base would expand so much that even with a lower margin, we're going to crush. And then if you're not thinking that as that company, hey, thanks capitalism. We got 10 other companies that are like, oh, these people aren't even doing this. Let's go after this market. This is an unfilled market. Let's go crush this market. And we help the living crap out of them. And that's it. All that leads to everyone getting everything. Like, I'll ask a legitimate question to which I already know the answer. Are there people in the United States so poor they cannot afford a cell phone? The answer is no. Just the answer is no. Like, half the homeless people I've met have cell phones. How the fuck does that work? Why? There's this cell phone right here. This is unreal, crazy technology. It's wild. There's satellite components in this. It talks to it's talking to satellite right now. Right now. How the hell am I able to afford this? Don't you worry. Genetic engineering is actually, as a deliverable, way simpler and less intense than your cell phone by 10 orders of magnitude. It's just like a few molecules. No problem. Everyone's going to get it. And look, if rich people or celebrities get the genetic engineering first, so what? There's more pretty people around. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to watch a stand-up. I don't want the comedian to look like whatever. I want him to look better. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice if celebrities were prettier? Or would you be like, oh, these celebrities are getting prettier and the rest of us aren't? So what? Sweet. It's more beautiful people. We're all on the same team. I want to see more pretty people. And don't you worry, very, very shortly, in a properly well-regulated free market system, you will get access to all that stuff, and then you can be whatever it is you want it to be. So the inequality thing is just the most short time horizon that you can ever put on a problem and totally misconstrue the problem and blow it out of proportion. All right. What if the tech base expands and now more people have access to genetic engineering technology, and some crazy groups somewhere in some weird country somewhere start to cook up bioweapons and go to New York City and spray everyone and tons of people die and all this stuff? First of all, most of the stuff will be done with big pharma. And big pharma is really good at being secure, and it's very hard to leak stuff out of. Like, you don't just walk out of, Pfizer, deep science lab with like a vial. That doesn't happen. I'm sure it happens on occasion. Maybe it happened with COVID in China. But generally speaking, there's a lot of security protocol, and the creation of security protocol around things like this is not a new thing. It's a very, very well-known space that security experts are very good at controlling. Now, that's to say the probability of this kind of thing is very low, but it's not zero. So we absolutely need lots of security at a high level. And I'm going to offer something real interesting that I think is a thing that maybe applies to a few other things. I think that it's good that we have a central intelligence apparatus let's just say, as the United States or as the free nations of the world, because the equivalent of CIA, the MI6 in England and whatever Germany has, and Israel and Taiwan and Japan, all the intelligence agencies of the free world, they have a lot of parity. So they work together on a lot of stuff because they have a lot of the same common enemies, and they're just trying to basically do some good in this world. I think that's a very powerful thing, and I think it should be used for the following purpose. If you are cooking up bioweapons, I think that intelligence agencies around the world should be looking for you. And I think that if they find that you're midway through doing something like this, or even just started doing something like this, they should have a spec ops team come talk to you, and they should come in hard. If you don't want to play on our society team, on Team Earth, on Team Human, on Team Make Everything Better for Everyone, if you want to make things worse, if you want to kill people with bioweapons or anything else, we should have a part of our team, the CIA, et cetera, Delta Force, that goes and finds you and hurts you badly in advance to do two things. One, prevent you from doing harm. And two, give other people in that space of potential bad actors the understanding that if you act badly, it won't be a nuance. You won't be a hero. You will not survive. Or if you survive, it's going to be in a supermax prison for the rest of your life. Terrible, terrible things are going to happen to you quickly. And the all-seeing eye is always looking at you. That's a good thing. We should have that thing. So people say, well, what about people can just develop their own bioweapons? Sweet, give it a shot. Give it a shot. And I think the intelligence apparatus should be listening in and knowing when people are making certain moves and then pouncing on them hard. Yes, very not libertarian take. I know. I'm also not a pure libertarian. like many of you have assumed so far. I got you. I got you. Anyway, let me know if you find that controversial in the comments. All right. Number 5 concern is that we shouldn't play God. Well, we're not, because we're just trying to do our best to survive today, tomorrow, and the day after. And God's wish for things, they just do this and things instantiate. We work for things and then those things become. We're not playing God. We're playing hard at work humans trying to survive. And if you believe in God, then you may also believe that God gave us the tools with which, the intellect with which, to survive and make the world better, and let's use them. I never saw the part of the Bible which said genetic engineering was bad. There are reasons for that. But conservatively, the reason is the Bible was not written by people who knew what genetic engineering was. But in the grand scheme, do you want things to be better? And do you think, if you believe in God, that God wants you to have less pain and less suffering through your own hard work and investment? Or does he think you should just have clinical depression and somehow learn some weird lesson from that your brain is unable to learn? I'm not convinced by that at all. I think that we should play our best hand. And if we start to look a little godlike, cool, we're doing really well. Anytime you sit in an air-conditioned house, you're already playing God if you think that went through, because that's not natural at all, and you built it. You're disgracing nature with your house. What are you doing? Lastly, on the concerns list is losing our humanity. People say this all the time, and I'm really not ever sure what it is that we're losing if we're losing our humanity. Is it like being made of flesh or being made like in the womb with no genetic modifications? Is that humanity? If that's humanity, like what's so good about it that's special? I don't know. What's so bad about losing humanity? Like if one of your friends comes back with genetic modification to have like really cool looking, super sharp blue eyes, you're going to be like, oh man, you lost your humanity. They're like, bro, it's still me. I just have blue eyes. You put in contact lenses, you don't lose your humanity. Now they're just permanent. What are we even talking about? And why is it bad? If you don't want the upgrades, in my ideal view of the world, you should absolutely never be forced to get them. You can just be completely unenhanced, totally cool. But then again, what is more human than trying to alter the environment around us and altering ourselves? Guys, look, ladies, you wax your upper lip, right? All of you do, most of you anyway. That's a thing that happens. You do your hair, you do your makeup, you're altering yourself already. If you just make those alterations permanent, you just have to spend less time fixing what your broken body keeps surfacing to you as what it wants to look like and be like and act like. We can do better. We can do better. So this whole losing our humanity thing is like, you know, imagine you somehow got a chimpanzee to understand like human language at a decent level. And you were like, do you want upgrades to become better at all these things? Like become more civil, become more productive, have a better life for yourself, no longer throw your feces at things and bite your relatives because you got upset. Would it be like, no, because what is then to become chimpanzee? I lose my chimpanzee-ness. You'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? You could be better. You could be better. The world that we have is to be made better. And if you don't think that, you must have it really good. Or you're just short-sighted. Sorry to offend. Moving on. All right. Potential pathways to development and expansion. How do I think that the genetic engineering revolution, if it occurs, because the speed of currently and probably unstoppably, the speed of AI expansion is so high and the rate is so rapid and so exponential, we might just all be uploading our brains to a machine here in the next 15 years and not even bothering with genetic upgrades. It could very well be a thing. You know, it kind of depends on what industry hits first. So if it's going to happen, and I think it will at least to some extent because AI still hasn't done all the cool stuff it's going to do, how is it going to happen? Here's how I think it might happen. Just some ideas for thought. First, I think the first pathways to genetic engineering really showing its stuff are going to be what are called monogenic disorders. Disorders are one gene, and even just one small part of a gene are broken, or it's a certain type of gene. And when you have that gene, you get the disorder. Examples are sickle cell anemia, muscular dystrophy of a few kinds, and Huntington's disease, which is real nasty because you're just totally healthy. And then at some point in your 40s, you just like everything breaks and you croak. So what is going to happen is likely the first curing of these is going to be via viral vector, so an injection into a human or a child, children are human, adult human or child. And the thing is that like once these things start happening, it's not like, oh, they cured Huntington's disease in one person and that's it. Generally, the way genomics works and the way genetic engineering will work is at a very short time after, probably months, if not just a few years, they'll be able to just cure Huntington's disease in everyone that has it. It's the same gene in everyone that causes it. So at some point, you're going to see a documentary, maybe in the year 2031 or 2029 or something, that it'll just be a documentary about a kid who struggled with cystic fibrosis. And it'll be a lot of filming of them, like, you know, coughing and all this other crazy stuff and just awful disease. And then they're going to get a genetic alteration, one shot at the doctors, and it'll track them for a few weeks. And they become someone without cystic fibrosis forever. And when that Netflix documentary hits, a lot of people will change their minds about genetic engineering. And maybe not even the whole grand spectrum of viewers of that documentary. Any parent with a child that has a genetic disorder is going to start calling a doctor and be like, can I get this? What is this? My son has this other disease. Is this in the works? I need to know about this. Is this real? And the doctor's going to be like, well, yeah, actually there's phase 3 trials we can enroll you in. Like, yes, fucking enroll me in these trials. What are you, crazy? They're saving my child? That's going to be a big deal. Just with monogenic disorders. Here's why I'm really optimistic about genetic engineering. When you start to cure monogenic disorders, just the media attention on that, and the thing is, I'm going to say something that's way oversimplified, but with technology, it's very tractable. Genetically curing monogenic disorders is not that complex. There is an order of complexity to curing polygenic disorders. I'll get into it in a bit, but it's a tractable problem. And once it happens, a lot of people will be like, oh my God, this is real? No more drugs, no more treatments, no more dealing with the disorder, no more pretending, oh, it's God's way of blessing our child and giving us a challenge so we can all grow. It's just gone. That is going to be a humongous injection of interest and money and support for genetic engineering. And there may not be a whole lot of looking back after that, which is a great thing. After the monogenics start to get squashed, the next pathways may be to oligogenic and simpler polygenic disorders, because polygenic disorders are tough. A lot of genes, if you have like 5 genes that are, if they're in this pattern, they cause a disorder. But if you put them into another pattern, they make your nose shape different and your psychology changes such that you're like more standoffish with people. And then if you have the disorder, you're actually really, your nose shapes like this and you're really just super kind with people, but you die when you're 13 when your liver breaks or something like that. Anytime you have multiple genes being controlled, genes generally don't code for one thing. They code for proteins that affect a ton of different structures. There's a combinatorial complexity problem there. You have to have a system that models the change and then models how the genes express themselves and does a reasonable job of saying this is probably going to be the outcome. So they'll say, hey, we've cured this disease. When you get the virus, your eyes are going to turn like a weird pinkish hue, and your ears are going to start to be shaped like a little bit more elf-like, funny enough. We know why it happens, but we can't change that yet because we're not advanced enough. But you just straight up won't have cancer ever again or something like that. Like that could be a thing. Oligogenic is just a few genes. Simpler monogenic, maybe 10, 20, 30 genes. That is in the future of genetic engineering. It is. After the monogenic ones and the technologies that are developed to really get good at monogenic disorders, someone's going to try a polygenic disorder that's simpler, oligogenic disorder, and then they're going to win. And then other companies are going to go like, holy crap, we can actually do this. This is tractable. This will start to zap a ton of diseases and will make genetic engineering look really, really good, because it's going to be like, is this the panacea? Is this the fountain of youth? Is this the wellspring we've been looking for this whole time? The answer is to all that is it's not magic. Yes, genetic engineering can fix almost everything if you do it right. The doing it right is insanely complicated and fraught with downsides, but it is possible. So this is kind of slowly how I think we're going to get into it. And then I think the next thing that may happen, and this is all wild speculation, is that aging reversal and appearance modifications may be the next thing, because it is a really tough ask to try to genetically re-engineer something like schizophrenia or depression, where you're screwing with the proteins, hundreds and hundreds of proteins at various different genes that produce your entire brain and all these complex behaviors. And what you're trying to do is just shift the balance a little this way or that way. You get one thing wrong, it can shift it all down and give you weird personality traits you didn't want. It can change the very person that you are just from us trying to get rid of your schizophrenia. So that's a big chunk, but there's easier chunks that we can do that are more kind of surface level features. So for example, aging reversal, like that could be genetically tractable and already is to a large extent in animals and in certain laboratory conditions. And in 5 or 10 years, that could be a thing that sort of everyone is getting, which would be amazing. And again, build up the support for more ambitious forms of genetic engineering. And also appearance modifications. For example, they can probably genetically engineer you without a ton of complexity, that you just have skin that ages 10 times slower than everyone else's, or skin that reverse ages and kind of just stays there. It's not terribly difficult. For example, we already know that human subpopulations have different skin aging stuff. Asians just don't age like white people do. They just straight up don't. Asian skin has been already researched to have some kind of, I think, an isoform of collagen protein that just maintains its tautness for longer than what Caucasians have on average. So that's a thing we know is possible already, and we could genetically engineer some skin improvements and stuff like that. We could potentially fix balding. I'm not buying that one. I'm only buying the genetic engineering. Sorry, there was some kind of dust cloud thing. I'm only buying the genetic engineering to get rid of all of my body hair because I hate it and I just never want body hair. It's annoying. I don't want to deal with it. But balding, a lot of people would pay for that. Skin texture, eye color, potentially the shape of your eyes, the shape of your face, where and how much body fat you put on, muscle mass, et cetera, et cetera. Now, here's the thing. This point number 3 here, fitness characteristic and physique characteristic genetic improvements, they may put me out of my proximate job, which is right now to design apps for training and diet. When everyone gets everything they need from genetic engineering, they have the perfect body already, the use case for our products we make currently may drastically decline. I'll put it that way. It's come up at some point and then decline. I'll get into that later in another video. But this is the kind of thing that if everyone is walking around and everyone has exactly the level of body fat they want, their body looks exactly how they want it to look, it doesn't really age anymore, and they're as beautiful as they have ever wanted to be externally, after all these 3 things, the first pathways to monogenic, oligogenic stuff, and then this whole of just external appearance stuff gets handled, this is a lot of showing off for genetic engineering. It's kind of how computers really showed off in the mid-90s with how much more work you could get done with them in an office than without them. Because in the 70s and 80s, if you had a computer at your desk, it was seen as a curiosity. Like, oh, so you got a computer. Oh, Mr. Hacker. Okay. Whereas in the 90s, if someone's like, oh, I see you got a computer, that's strange. You'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? It's critical to my business. It helps me make 10 times more money. What are you, nuts? And then in the 2000s, the 2010s, and now the 2020s, the idea of someone being like, oh, a computer, huh? Guess you're trying to show off with tech. It would just actually be, you wouldn't understand what a person was saying if they said that. So if you go into the year of maybe 2035 or something when everyone's being genetically enhanced and you're like, oh, enhancements? Jesus, you really? It's pretty strange. Be like, what the hell are you talking about? Something everyone does. Do you not want to look better? Like, it's really an open and shut case if it's done right. So I think that's going to be a huge boost, right? Now, that takes us to hypotheses about the future, longer future of genetic engineering. Because I think this earlier first stuff, the pathways to development and expansion, fixing the simpler disorders, slightly more complex disorders, or genetic disease rather, and then maybe like some cosmetic stuff, better skin, better this, better that. I think it'll set the stage for more crazy stuff, more in-depth stuff. And this problem of taking proteins, taking genes, trying to figure out what proteins they're going to make, taking these proteins and putting them together in a mock human cell or even a mock human body that's digitally rendered and predicting the interactive effects was previously an intractable problem. I mean, we just didn't have the computational resources or the computational paradigm to actually deal with this problem because it was like, Do you know how many combinations of things you're talking about here? This is something a classical computer may not be able to solve. Here's the thing. Right very now, companies like NVIDIA are manufacturing neural network optimization chips and computer hardware. And the reports from industry experts on this is that they are 9 and 10xing their abilities regularly every few months and years. So the ability to support neural network AI hardware-wise is going whoop, like that. And that whoop, that top doesn't even touch quantum computing, which is currently making leaps and bounds in a very experimental setting. But the kinds of calculations and calculatory throughput that quantum computing can do is like difficult to put your head around. At the same time, AI with neural network algorithms is just getting an insane boost in ability, especially in an ability to take in enormous data sets and crunch out different degrees of abstraction such that a huge amount of interaction that to you just looks like noise, to the AI is like, yeah, that modification you make is going to produce the following features. It's going to produce paler skin. It's going to produce darker freckles. It's going to reduce your liver enzymes by this much, and 15 other things. How did you know that just from us changing this protein? Well, it can run the simulation. The fact that all this is happening right now means that in 2032 or 2033, something like that, pretend fantasy land numbers, in those years, the idea that you can simulate a genetic engineering effect in a real human without ever touching a real human, that you could simulate this genetic engineering effect so well that you could give it to a primate or to a laboratory rat or something and have a 99.9% chance that it'll work exactly like you thought, we have the tools to do that. So what I'm about to say on what we will be able to do could sound like Fantasyland from where you're sitting, and I totally hear you on that. But it can also sound like something very realistic with technologies that we're already working on now. And if you don't believe me, just Google protein folding progress AI. Just Google that right now, or go to ChatGPT and ask it, can you tell me about the progress that AI is making on the protein folding problem? This is a very perfect example of a combinatorial problem that's previously insurmountable and is now they're getting unbelievably good at it. So this stuff with enough computation is possible. The stuff that I'll say a lot on this channel is looking to the future and assessing what AI and insane computation will be allowing to make possible. What I want to get to you guys, hopefully if you're interested in listening, if you're not, if you think I'm a bullshit artist, totally cool. I probably am half the time. What I want to get across is here is what the potential future may look like. And I want you guys to be prepared to make rational progress and improvement values-based choices on which policies and which trajectories and which things you're going to support so that we can all make the best future together. So this is some of the stuff that could be happening. Here's how some of it might look. So after genetic engineering is more normalized and people are like, yeah, of course you engineer anything you can because you make yourself better, psychiatric engineering may become more palatable. Because right now it's like, wait, what? That's crazy. We're going to be changing people, but hold on a sec. If a fraction of people right now, which is a quite large fraction, even let's say 5% of our global population, have crippling depression. If you tell them, hey, look, Dr. Mike Biosciences has a shot that you take once ever, and you'll have the flu because it's a foreign substance. And after a couple of days of the flu, you're going to wake up and you're not going to be depressed and you'll never be depressed again. They're like, all right, what's the downside? They're like, well, I've tested the crap out of it, but it just costs $29. So got to pay our bills. Okay, for $29, I can get a shot that cures my depression forever. Again, what are the downsides? Well, it'll make you cheery all the time, which people could find annoying if they're not used to. So you'll be that guy at the party that's like, hey, man, I'm just trying to have a good time. How you doing, Susan? Get out of my face, Frank. I liked you better when you were depressed. Who's going to stop people from making these advancements? Who's going to stop people from taking these genetic engineering drugs? Who? Are you going to do it? Why? Why would you stop that? Psychiatric genetic engineering, if the brain-machine interface thing doesn't take off way before and render our human biological psychology irrelevant because we'll be living in the cloud, it's inevitable as an unreal human desire. Because a lot of the ways you construct your life right now around you, you're like, I got to have all the happy things around me. I got to have this bedtime routine, blah, 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 because otherwise I'll be depressed. What if you just took that right out, just threw it away? What if you didn't have to be depressed anymore? Wouldn't that be unbelievable? Wouldn't that be like the greatest thing ever? I think so. And I think when we have the ability computationally to design these kinds of vectors, yeah, that's very interesting for people who have depressive thought patterns that are overwhelming and harmful to them in their life. Yes, maybe this is a good thing. Second, during the research and deployment of fixing or attempting to fix all these psychological and psychiatric disorders through gene editing, we're going to discover something we already know. And most people don't know this, but it's true, so I'll just say it here. Almost all psychological and psychiatric disorders are what are called spectrum disorders. Everyone is a little bit schizophrenic. Schizophrenia really basically can be defined as your grounding in reality and the logical consistency of your thought patterns. Can you weave a thought that is relatively cogent down a particular line, or does it spray out into what's called like tangential thought, tangential speech? Like a schizophrenic person will be talking about one thing 1 minute and then completely something else the next. Cue Kanye West versus Lex Friedman interview. Not joke. It's schizophrenic-ish bipolar thing going on. Everyone's a little bit of that. If you take a bunch of weed gummies, you turn into more of that temporarily. If you do a ton of like caffeine or Adderall or something, you turn into less of that. You're really, really hyper-focused. So everyone's somewhere on the spectrum on that. And there are optima on the spectrum where it's just your best combination of creativity and focus or something like that. And there are other things like attention and focus that may have maxima, that everyone finds out they're on the spectrum somewhere of how attentive they are. And they realize, okay, so my buddy, he just got his genetic engineering done because he had really bad attention deficit disorder. And then he just is like a hyper-focused machine and he's so productive and he loves it. And I've never had a problem with attention, but I can't do what he does. Can I get that too? And then generally people will be like, well, yeah. So we go from trying to treat and cure psychiatric maladies to realizing that the malady was just like, you're here on the normal curve, you're way below average. We bring you up to the middle or we bring you up to the top. But then everyone in the middle are clustered through the low end and middle and even close to the top. They're going to be like, well, why can't we get to the top too? And then pharmaceutical industry will have to be like, well, I mean, yeah, you could. Why not? Like, don't want to put too much of an analogy on this, but I've taken Adderall before through a prescription because I had diagnosed attention deficit disorder. When I got to college, I realized a ton of people who did not have ADHD were taking Adderall. And at first I was like, why? But then they were like, it just makes my attention span better and I can do more work. Even though I can naturally do all the work just fine, I can do way more work this way faster, and then I can go party for longer on the weekends. Like, oh. So it's an enhancement for you. Like, yep. Okay, so what's to stop people from enhancing? If you are generally pretty happy and sometimes pretty sad, would you consider a genetic vector to make you almost never cripplingly sad? We all have our days where we're just like, oh, fuck the world. Maybe you just have none of those days anymore. Maybe very few. Would you take that viral vector? Some people wouldn't. A lot of people would. And if we're okay with optimizing psychological qualities at this point, then upgrading intelligence is going to seem pretty obvious because we're like, okay, we're messing with the brain, we're genetically engineering the brain. Everyone's cool with it because obviously it just leads to better stuff. And now everyone's a better person, literally, for themselves and their own brain and for other people as well. So what about intelligence upgrades? And I truly do believe that upgrades to intelligence will be the most potentially revolutionary thing that has ever happened to society, other than like electricity, the computer, and AI. I think intelligence upgrades are probably going to be a bigger deal than the internet. Maybe that's wrong, but it's certainly on that order of magnitude. Making people smarter with genetic engineering. So you take a person with an IQ of like 90, like, you know, they're not quite intelligent enough to do all sorts of really high complex jobs that they can do pretty good in food service or something like that. And they find time to figure out most of the world, how that works, but a lot of esoteric concepts they don't understand. When you give them an IQ boost to 145, they instantly become someone that has the raw intelligence to be admitted to Harvard. And now you have someone who works in a burrito line at Chipotle that has the intelligence to be admitted to Harvard. And let's say they're the manager of that Chipotle. And let's say they like their job. They don't want to leave. How do you think their management skills will improve when their IQ goes up by that much? They're going to become the best Chipotle manager in a generation, and then everyone else who gets a shot also becomes that. We all get that much smarter. It's better for everyone. It will improve the world so much that trying to stop it will be some combination of impossible and just curious. Why would you want to stop people from becoming smarter? That's crazy. And our previous video addresses a lot of the concerns if you want to watch that. Now, if you don't want the boost, don't get it. If you want to become smarter, don't get it. Again, if you were my personal friend and I was like, hey, you're going to get that IQ boost they got coming out? And you're like, nah. I would be like, bro, I would ask you to think this through, but you are seemingly not intelligent enough to think it through. Maybe if you got the boost, you would be smarter and you'd be able to really think it through. And then if that didn't work out, you could say, hey, give me the anti-boost, give me the genetic regression, which I hope they don't make. I don't want to be smart anymore. It's one of those things where it's like a really, really big deal and a huge, huge, huge net positive. And I think this will be kind of the last move in genetic engineering, because once everyone is way smarter, the pace of change accelerates and the positives just start to go crazy, and then really, really amazing things happen. I think that some point during this time, we could potentially see a business model. There's basically the subscription model of genetic boosting. A company like 23andMe, which, by the way, a bunch of these companies that take your DNA, they are busy, busy, busy bees building enormous data sets of genes. They study all your shit, which isn't great. What they're doing right now is they're building enormous data sets at a bunch of companies where they have all the genes from millions and millions of people that they've analyzed. And they have a ton of the genetic traits, the disorders people have. They have a ton of the people's psychological proclivities and all this other stuff that they have. And they're building insanely complex correlational networks. When AI is going to be able to read and understand all that, which, by the way, it probably can to a large extent already, it's going to be able to say, like, hey, like if you move this gene this way and this gene that way, you can get like 3 more IQ points with really no downsides. Basically, what these companies are going to end up doing is they develop candidate upgrades to various diseases, test the crap out of them, performance abilities, mental abilities, etc. And you will have a subscription service that every few months you go in and get your shot. The shot comes with various genetic boosts that are just going to be general, like the general package of like lowers all diseases and it makes you smarter. And also like optional psychiatric package where it makes you feel nicer. And then some other stuff is going to be just a la carte. Like you could say, I want custom mod to have my eyes red like a vampire, my skin pale white, I want long teeth, and I want to be able to see in the dark. And they're going to be like, yeah, sweet. That's like $300 and you're a vampire. Congratulations, weirdo. And you walk out in your goth clothing and you look like Neo from the Matrix and all is well. So I think it's totally possible that a bunch of people pay a regular subscription fee and go in and just get boosted genetically over time, such that from 2032 to 2036, you just become genetically better at just a handful of things everyone agrees is better every year. And also, if you have extra money, you can pay a fee on top of that for like, hey, I want the super booster package and I want these things included. I want my eyes to look like blah, 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 blah. And at some point, people are just getting better all the time and kind of almost everyone is on this train. And that's a thing that you would say, oh, this will never happen, but subscription service happens in a ton of stuff, and there's no reason to suspect that it wouldn't happen with this. Absolutely could be a thing, which is really crazy. Now, lastly, and this is where it gets real cyberpunk and really weird, there is LMI and BMI, limb-machine interface and brain-machine interface. Genetic engineering could potentially give you the ability to be a better candidate for brain-machine interface. Your genes are now constructing your body, not to optimize so much of the walk around, move by itself body things, but optimized to put you inside of a machine shell, interact with a machine, or a shell for your moving limbs. So maybe you really highly prioritize VR. It is predicted, it almost certainly is going to happen, that over the next 5 to 10 years, especially 10 years, I think, people, at least a huge class of society, is going to be spending increasing amounts of time, probably more and more time in VR. Technically speaking, screen time on your phone is VR. It's a very just part of your visual field and auditory field VR. But when you see people on planes and on buses and everywhere else in meetings just doing this, they're not gone. They're not playing on their phone. They're spending time in virtual space. Instagram and TikTok is virtual space. You're connecting with other people. When the metaverse matures and virtual space grows to become super everything around you, and you can put on the goggles and the earplugs and all this other stuff, eventually you'll be able to genetically engineer your body such that it plugs in really easily. And it doesn't have to be super modified or buy a bunch of expensive equipment. If you're starting to live more and more of your life in VR, you might just want to be like, dude, I don't care if I can go out and play sports. Who cares? I don't care if my body's not 6 feet tall or has blue eyes. Who sees my real eyes anyway? I want to be in VR and have magic eyes and look like a dragon and run around in Fantasyland forever, or work and play all in VR, see my friends in VR. You might start to modify yourself to be more like VR. That's where people become like smaller and alien looking and creepy, maybe. But that's what makes them interact with VR better. Then, hey, that's awesome. Maybe you can also have some genetic engineering to allow yourself to have different limbs. I absolutely will be making a video about this. It already is on my to-do list, but I think in the future, maybe not so distant future, 10 years or something like that, what's going to happen is at first, so right now they're already making artificial limbs that can communicate with your body's nervous system, and they're doing some pretty cool stuff. They're picking up objects, and it takes a while to learn, and the AI algorithm in the limb, there's a chip, and the AI kind of learns your nervous system, and your nervous system learns it back. And it's sort of like a little bit clunky, but way better than anything we've had. At some point, because now the company that manufactures these artificial limbs is a software company and a hardware company. It's like Tesla or like Apple or something. Tesla and Apple make unbelievable shit way faster than evolution works. So within 5 years from now, formal prediction, I think in the year 2028, 2029, 2030, there are going to be artificial limbs potentially on the market that straight up outperform human limbs on every possible metric, including how long they last. You're going to have people, this sounds super wacky, and if it's not for you, no worries, that are going to replace their regular limbs with artificial limbs. And genetic engineering might have a role to play in preparing your body to not reject the limb, to mesh with it better, all kinds of other stuff. Because it just maybe like if you want to go and change your robot legs to one thing or another, depending on the activity, you may be able to do that. You may be able to have 3 sets of legs, like you have shoes at home, and you put on various sets of legs depending on the activity, or you just have like really awesome universal legs that you use for a bunch of stuff. And then it becomes a thing where humans start to meld with machines piece by piece. Do we eventually become machines, et cetera? That's for a different video, but that's a place genetic engineering at its most extreme can point us to. And I think that's at the very least interesting. And lots more crazy stuff to say. I'll do that in a bunch of future videos. Like, comment, subscribe, and see you guys next time.